we can't expect the body to heal running on the same operating system that where the symptoms showed up. Like, it doesn't make logical sense. We have to reprogram the operating system. We have to decondition. We have to shift the patterns, rewire, all of those things.
I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
I'm your host, Christa Bigler, and I'm going to guess we have at least one thing in common, that we're both in pursuit of a less stressed life. On this show, I'll be interviewing experts and sharing clinical pearls from my years of practice to support high-performing, health-savvy women in pursuit of abundance and a less stressed life. One of my beliefs is that we always have options for getting the results we want. So let's see what's out there together. All right, today on The Less Stressed Life, I have Hope Pedraza, who's a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, a human design guide, a clinical hypnotherapist, and host of the Hopeful and Wholesome podcast. She helps high-performing, spiritually curious women optimize their energy, rebalance their nervous system, and reconnect with their body's wisdom so they can scale their business and life without burnout. Her signature method blends functional labs, human design embodiment, and subconscious reprogramming to create sustainable radiance from the inside out. Welcome to the show, Hope.
Thanks, Christa. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah. So Hope has a myriad of things that we may cover today, a little bit from this mineral perspective, which is a physical perspective, and then what's going on with emotional and energetics. And I mention this every so often on the show that I'd like to consider issues through this lens of a health triad, right? So one corner is nutritional chemical, one corner is maybe structural or environmental, and another corner is emotional and energetic. So it's cool because she is fusing this. That's the exception instead of the rule. You really have to go outside of yourself and pull things together. So I'd love to hear, first of all, how this happened, why you are combining all of these things. Tell us a little bit about your story, personally or professionally, and how these things started to come together overall for you.
Yeah. So my journey, which I think similar to yours, kind of started at the physical level, right? I had a ton of gut issues growing up. And as I got older, I started reading and educating myself and basically just kind of figured out how to help with like my really severe IBS stuff. And so it started as a physical thing. And I was like hardcore vegan for 10 years. And that's for whatever reason, that's what worked for me. I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but that's what worked for me for my gut. And it healed my IBS and allergies and all these things. And so I felt the effects of that. And then as I went into my 20s and later, I was recognizing like, okay, I've done all this stuff to help my gut, but then I'm recognizing that there's still some things off. And when I was going through my functional practitioner training and to do all the labs myself, and that was a really big wake up call for me because I felt like I was a really healthy person. Like I'm doing all the things, I'm the diet, the supplements, all the things. And my adrenals were like in the toilet, like so bad. There's things that showed up on my gut labs and I'm like, what the heck? I've done all this stuff to my gut. So I'm seeing like, okay, I feel quote unquote fine. I feel like I'm a healthy person, but there's all these things that are still evident, like happening in my body. And so that was the tipping point for me. And at the same time, I was on my own like spiritual journey and working in like emotions and energetics and all the things. And so I was recognizing like, okay, I see now that there are patterns playing like in my subconscious thoughts, beliefs, all the things. And there has to be this connection to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, why I'm like in full on adrenal burnout at the moment. And I need to get to the bottom of it. So that was when all the pieces for me started to come together. I had just started diving into human design. And that was like a big aha awakening moment for me and studying that part of myself and then diving into the subconscious reprogramming and all those energetic pieces. So really, the reason that I put all these things together and the work that I do is just for my own journey and recognizing that there are a lot of pieces missing when we're only looking at the physical body. And if we really want to get to the quote unquote root cause, like I use that word a lot, right? You can't compartmentalize yourself. You can't separate it into the body and the mind and the emotions. And you have to put all those pieces together. And that's the only holistic is a word that I don't love to use, but for lack of a better word, like whole, like putting the whole equation together and looking at yourself holistically, you have to put all those pieces together.
I think this is an important conversation for us to have because I was smiling because I remember being in denial about my adrenal burnout. I remember getting one test and being like, oh, interesting. Not sure if that's accurate. And then a different test, like, I feel fine. Oh, and the thing is that there's a lot of high achievers operating through life and doing a really good job at doing well enough, or shoving that under the rug, or just putting it in the closet, because you got to keep going. Yep. And there's a lot of worthiness and tying our worth to productivity that starts to stem or fuel that. And I know you like to talk about that. So can you chat a little bit about where this might be coming from for us as these high performing, high achieving women?
Yeah. I agree with you. And that was my experience as well, where I was like, this can't be right. This can't be. But then looking hindsight, recognize, oh, this is why I'm getting sick all the time. Why I was getting injured all the time. Why I was like, there's all these things that started adding up. And the worthiness piece, I have a whole series on my podcast that I did earlier this year on this, because it was something that kept coming up over and over again with the women that I work with. And it was something that I had this huge revelation with a couple of years ago, that this was the driving factor for so much of what was going on in my body, why my adrenals were like hanging on for dear life, and why I was experiencing these things over and over again. And I had this epiphany that my worth was tied to my productivity. It was tied to my output. It was tied to all these things of me doing and accomplishing, and right. And I think, I talked about this yesterday on a podcast, actually. I feel like as women, we have this collective core wound, and that this is what it is. We can talk about generational trauma or however you want to talk about it, but we've gone generations and generations of women's only worth producing humans. Usually that's the only worth that we had, was, oh, you can make babies. And that was the only thing that women were good for. And so I think that we all carry that in our DNA. We all carry that in our cells. And yes, there are conditions in the world, socially, culturally, that enforce this, but it's also like it's in our cells. Like, we're also born with it. And then it just gets reinforced the older we get and the more we are a part of society. And so I think that I really feel like, I dare say, all women have this commonality, and it might show up differently. Some people are people pleasers, and some people are overgivers, and some people are like hardcore doing everything. Like, it shows up differently, but it all, for me, in my experience, it all comes down to that worthiness piece. And our worth is tied to all these things, whether it's fear of disappointing people or hurting people's feelings or sharing our emotions, being too big, being too small. Like, all of this comes down to worthiness issues, and it affects us at a cellular level, and it's affecting us on a physical level. It's the driving factor for so many physical things going on in a woman's body.
I couldn't agree more. I use this coaching model in practice, and people don't really come in and say, I feel unworthy. Right, that's not what they're going to say, but it's just like, it's under the hood of how we're doing everything for everyone else, or we have to finish the dishes before we could even rest. It's like, exactly, those pieces. And that was the same commonality I was finding as well, but people don't necessarily come in and say that. And I think also this actually goes against our biology in a sense, because pouring out is very masculine, right? Doing all the things, we're very capable. I would dare say we're a very capable gender. And so a lot gets put on our plate, right? One, we're producing children, but then as we come into the workforce, we're doing all of it and more, plus all of the other volunteering. But I think we have to remind ourselves that the divine feminine is receiving.
Yeah.
It is not pouring out. And that is, I don't know, I think it stopped me in my tracks at one point. But all of this starts to, you brought up human design. I loved Enneagram for such a long time, and I'm Enneagram 3, an achiever, right? And so it's however you must see yourself. If you feel like you love to be productive, this might be a little, like, how is that showing up in your life? And so I want to ask you next, I think burnout is such a cool, interesting, appropriate topic to talk about all the time because, see different stats. It's that like most people are burned out at some point or at any given point. And so I want to talk about what burnout is, where it starts, and overcoming it, which I know is a really big topic, but I just want to give a little bit of life to burnout, because that's really what we're talking. That's how I think of physical manifestation, is like your adrenals, you've been pushing on the gas for so long, or compensating so much. And then at some point we're going to run out of gas or minerals and nutrients to operate that. So let's talk about however you want to frame burnout. Where do you think that starts in general in our lives? What kind of dissonance is happening? How does it start to unravel? And then what does it look like?
Yeah, I think the big misconception people have about burnout is that it's doing too much. That's how people burn out, is they do too much. But the fact is that it's not about how much you're doing. It's how you're doing it, really, is what it's doing things that are misaligned. It's doing things in a misaligned way. Because there is one side of this where I can do things that I'm really passionate about and excited about, and I can work from sun up to sundown and be really excited about it. Go to bed, sleep great, wake up the next day and feel great about it because it's aligned for me. And it's something I'm excited about and it's something I'm lit up about. There's another way of doing it where I'm pushing and forcing myself to do something that I said yes to that I didn't really want to say yes to. And it's going against every boundary that I've set. And I'm right. That's a misaligned way to do it. You wake up the next day and you feel terrible because you're doing it in misaligned energy. So it's not about how much we're doing. It's how we're doing it and the energy we're doing it in. It's taking misaligned action. And so I think which is one of the reasons I love bringing human design into the work that I do, because it allows women to understand how their energy is designed to work so they can make these more empowered decisions about setting boundaries, how I'm working in my business or my career, my family, etc. And I can take these actions in an aligned way that I know is going to be in alignment with my energy and how my energy is meant to flow, how my energy is meant to operate, and I'm not sacrificing myself in the process. And for me, that's what burnout is. And it's your body. Our bodies always know when we're taking action in a misaligned way. It's just whether we choose to listen to it or not. We know the feeling of like heaviness or contraction or restriction in the body when we're doing something that's not aligned for us, whether you use that language or not. Maybe you say it in a different way. So we know, and eventually that's what catches up to us. That's when we start to drain our adrenals and our hormone, our minerals and all these things, because your body, there's all these energetic leaks because we're doing things in a misaligned way. And it's literally sucking the life force out of you. And that for me, I want to be able to help women understand this energetic piece. So there's like this free flow of life force energy rather than all these leaks everywhere.
I want to talk a little bit about human design. And I will say that I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. So I don't know how far deep we can get. But before that, I want to give a little bit more tangible example to misaligned energy. And I was thinking as you were talking for an example, I'd love for you to give an example too. And I was thinking about how this might show up for someone. So a really potentially resonant one that might show up for someone is dreading the next workday because you've got X, Y, Z going on. And I think that their life is not 100. Like it's not 100% perfect. It's 50-50. So there will be some things you don't want to do, but it's just the fact of, is that the majority or not the majority is the first question to me. And so it's if the majority of the days are like, that's when it's really out of balance. If it's more sucking, it's more out of balance. And actually, I think sometimes we have this misunderstanding of that we'd have to change our job or change the circumstance or change where we live or the relationship before we can be in alignment. And that may or may not be true, but there might be some things to figure out before that. So I remember having this, I think we go through this regardless. I think one of the things of being an entrepreneur is sometimes creating, inventing, solving problems. And so last year I was forced to look at, I don't like the way these things are happening in business, specifically when people feel like they don't understand what they're doing long-term, right? Or they feel like they need to rely on a practitioner long-term. That's really disempowering and not really lending to autonomy. And that was a problem. I was like, I don't like this thing. And another one, I'll give another example of where I had to make some changes as well, is I could do mineral testing and I could see your adrenals burned out and I could see you feeling better when you start to replete them, but I could see that you're still depleted without changing these emotions and energetics. And so anyway, I bring this up because when I restructured my business, I didn't quit my job. I just looked for the problems that were specifically burning me out, right? And with good, hard awareness, right? And all that is like stopping and asking myself, like, what's sucking my energy? And could I shift that in this situation? And I think anytime we think we don't have control over something is really a drain. It really can feel out of alignment. Sure. So it's really to me, it's a question of like how much is being drained out versus filled up. So for you, do you have any other, I gave a couple examples there, right there, but I don't know if there's any other example that really comes to mind for you when you think about what it might look like when someone's out of alignment from your perspective or a client perspective or just whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I have a ton of examples just because that's one of the big things that I help the women that I work with. I think those examples you gave are really common examples. I think I have a friend who's a functional practitioner and she's big into human design as well. And she's a projector, which if anyone listening knows what a projector is, you have a really sensitive aura. You don't have consistent, stable energy to like keep going all day, every day. And so she checks, like she only hires people who she does their human design and hires people who are generators or manifesting generators to basically fill in her energetic gaps. So she recognizes, okay, I know where my limitations are. I know where the gaps are going to be. And I need this other type that has this consistent energy to keep it going. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's so smart because she's already recognizing like where the opportunity would be for her to burn herself out. I could do all these things. I could keep going and doing all these things, but it's going to feel really bad and it's going to drain me. And so she fixed the right people that are going to fill those gaps for her. I love that example because I think that maybe that's not the exact example that everybody can relate to, but for that same concept of like, where do we need to like maybe it's delegating things, right? Maybe it's delegating things. Maybe it's like you said, I'm shifting how I'm doing things. For me, that was a big thing for me. And I have a brick and mortar business as well. I have a Pilates studio and the worthiness piece, right, shows up a lot. So for a long time, I had this aversion to getting a manager. And I was literally working like every day, every night, teaching a ridiculous amount of classes. And that was really one of the huge sources of my burnout. But it was being able to delegate. Like you said, the control thing, I think that was a huge thing for me. Nobody's going to do it like me. And I didn't give anybody a chance to. Nobody got a chance to do it. Yeah. And now I have the best manager on the planet. So, I mean, it's just understanding, like recognizing where you're gripping so tightly and not allowing things to flow. That's a huge energy suck. And again, maybe it's delegation or maybe it's finding people to fill in the energetic gaps. But all of those things, when we resist those are going to be huge leaks on our energy. And it's a huge contributor to burnout.
I love those examples. I think one, I want to just highlight and underline them. I remember coaching with a friend who owned a couple of businesses. And that was like under the hood. It was like, oh, you're worried that no one can do it like you. Of course, no one can do it like you. Right. And you can't do everything. What do you want to do? Continue to pour it all out. Yep. And then the other one where your friend hires in gaps, that I learned that lesson hard. So I use Enneagram. And similarly, I think we tend to want to often have more people like us. And actually that can be a source of stress because you probably don't need more people like you. You need the people to fill in the gaps overall. Yep. So I don't know how far we could really get into human design, but so we'll just lightly maybe touch on it because I think it's a whole different episode potentially unwrapping that. But what is it at a very eagle eye level and how do you necessarily apply it a little bit to wellness overall? Because that's not necessary. I don't know that's how most people use that tool. I think the way you're using it is a bit unique. So tell us a little bit from a bird's eye view, since you've mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah. Basically, human design is your energetic blueprint. So it is your soul's energetic blueprint, how you are here to live and move, interact with the world around you, with the people around you. And it combines some kind of ancient teachings like the chakra system and the I Ching and the Kabbalah tree of life and astrology. And that puts it together with some more modern day sciences like quantum mechanics and quantum physics and neuroscience. And it puts it together into this cool little chart. And so within your body graph, it gives a whole explanation of how energy is designed to move through you, how you best make decisions and move and be, the lessons you're here to learn, the light of your life that you're here to live out. There's so many things that we can find inside your human design. The way that I use it, when you look at wellness through the lens of human design, we spend a lot of energy being and doing in a way that we are not designed to. And so when we are moving and living in that way, we're going to end up meeting resistance. You know, it's first going to show up as energetic resistance, but eventually it's going to show up on the physical body. No, a lot of people listening might also believe like me that every physical thing happening on the body has some energetic, emotional root cause. And so when we are living in that way and we're constantly meeting that resistance, eventually it is going to manifest itself physically on the body. So we're using human design. It allows you to understand yourself from this energetic perspective. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Why am I doing things in the way that I'm doing? Why do I have these beliefs and these patterns? We're all conditioned. I mentioned conditioning earlier. We're born conditioned. It's in our DNA, but it's also society and culture and family and all these things. And so all of this is these layers that get poured on top of who we are at a soul level. And this is the resistance because we're not meant to live out someone else's life. We're meant to live out our own life and our own soul's purpose. And so with human design, we're able to understand that and pull back those layers and really discover who you are at this soul energetic level. So we can allow that free flow of life force energy that allows homeostasis, equilibrium in the body, however you want to say it, but it allows the physical body to be in balance, just like the energetic body. So it's really just this deep understanding of the body at an energetic level that allows you to also find balance in your physical body.
Okay. So since we are covering everything from energetic and emotional to physical and nutritional. There's a potential connection between minerals, and maybe we should back up a little bit and cover. I use minerals in practice, and I started to use them, one, because I was introduced to them by a colleague, and two, I found that this test option or looking at minerals, it's a huge thing. It's how everything works in the body, right? If you don't have minerals, then none of the biochemical reactions will work. But from a testing perspective, right, as we go through this testing thing and go through these experiences, there are positives and negatives or limitations and better approaches to different ways of doing things. And in short, it ended up being a lower cost, more in-depth picture of different patterns going on in the body. It would show you adrenal burnout with almost more accuracy than with more ease and more accuracy and less expense than some other testing. I just wanted to give my kind of definition of how I landed there, and I'm curious how you landed there, and then what you found as you started working with minerals and how these other sort of modalities started to, so we'll unpack it as we go, but
Yeah.
we did a little eagle eye from human design, but then I want to dance back to the physical of, okay, tell me how you got into minerals and what you were seeing, what were some of the most common patterns you were seeing, and then we'll tie it into the other pieces as well.
Yeah. My experience was similar. I love that it's just a really cost-effective way to get really good data, and functional labs can get really expensive. And some of them I do find have their own limitations. And I find that this one is a really good comprehensive look at everything. And I started doing, I think it was maybe a year or so into my work that I started tying in the minerals. And I just found that it helped connect so many dots that were not connecting looking at other labs. And to your point too, like, I get, for me, that mineral testing is the only lab I offer as a standalone lab because I feel like it can give that much really great data, where if they don't want to spend $1,000 on labs, then this is a really inexpensive way to get really good data and to see some really good results when we focus on that. And at the same time, I think too, it's how you started that question. I think there's this deep understanding that we talk about minerals being the spark plugs in the body, and to really have that deep understanding of knowing we want to know what's going on at a cellular level, you have to look at minerals. That's what's happening at a cellular level. And when we talk about hormones, the gut and all that, minerals are involved in all of those things. So it's that foundational piece of what's happening in the body, like physiologically. And so for me, I want to start at the root, at the foundation.
For sure. Okay. So when you started running mineral testing, whenever that was, what did you start to see most commonly?
In past winters, my son has gotten dry hands that can crack and bleed. I found that giving him at least 300 to 600 milligrams of high-quality fish oil really resolves this in a few weeks. This year, I started him on Jigsaw's Alaska cod liver oil because it's the best value for high-quality U.S.-sourced cod liver oil. Just 1 teaspoon gives him 1,000 milligrams of total omega-3s, which just means faster results with nature's natural dose of synergistic vitamin A and D already found in cod liver oil to support immune health. Jigsaw sources their cod liver oil from Alaska, where line-caught fish are flash frozen on the boat. This keeps the fish oil very fresh, so it doesn't require more processing and deodorizing like other fish oils, which can disrupt the oils and nutrients. So when you combine Jigsaw's incredible cod liver oil with some of their other wonderful electrolyte mineral products, it's a winning combination to keep your skin beautifully hydrated year after year. You can get a discount on all of Jigsaw's products, including Alaska Cod Liver Oil, Electrolyte Supreme, Adrenal Cocktail, and Potassium Cocktail, formerly known as Pickleball, at jigsawhealth.com with the code LessStressed10, which you can use on each and every order. That's code LessStressed10.
Yeah. I think the biggest things, which I'm sure you can attest to, the biggest things for me were looking at like really sad adrenals, really sluggish thyroids. I had a lot of high tissue calcium. I had quite a lot of calcium shells going on, and copper toxicity and copper dysfunction in the body. Those are probably the most common. Yeah. And a lot of it was all of that happening at once. Like it's all on the same level.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I laughed when you said sad adrenals. That's usually what I say as well. Oh, this is great though. The exciting part about it is that I feel like these are the women that are getting lost between the cracks everywhere else. And so it's a beautiful thing because it could be the thing that someone needs for validation, because usually with testing, we all are looking for validation. The challenge is with some testing, and it always depends on the context, So I always ask people to answer 2 questions before testing. What do you want to know? What do you hope to learn? Which I may have to educate you on what you could learn from this, right? As we just did with mineral testing. What do I hope to learn? And can I be content if the answers are inconclusive? Which usually with minerals, like that's just not the case.
Yeah,
You just
that's true.
really don't get inconclusive results. You get data. And so we talked about sad adrenals and sluggish thyroid. Will you just mention calcium shell and what some of the physical but energetic causes of calcium shell could be?
Yeah. So there's a couple things here that I find with calcium shell. And this could be like an acute situation, like an acute trauma that was like this extreme stress response, the calcium protecting your cells from a lot of cortisol, or it could be just a chronic thing. For most of my clients, it's a chronic thing. It's like you're in this chronic state of stress and the tissue calcium starts to build up. And what we see is I've had multiple clients having severe brain fog. And I had one client who swore she had ADD or ADHD and she was about to go get on medication. I'm like, let's just try some things first. Sure enough, like we broke through the calcium shell, balanced the minerals out, and she's totally fine. And so we start to, and then there's the other part, the emotional rigidity is the word that's coming up for me, but there's this emotional dullness, right, that happens and this feelings of apathy, right, also can come up from calcium shell. And so just feeling emotionally detached or dull. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You brought up this phrase that's very common, and you mentioned chronic stress. And I find chronic stress is often unrealized stress. So these kinds of test results can be awakening in some way. But I always love to ask people when this comes up, what if someone doesn't think that they're stressed? Or if they're like, I think I'm fine. What would you say in that scenario?
Yeah.
I know it's a big question.
It is. And I said the same thing. Like, what is this? This isn't right. I'm totally fine. The thing is, our bodies are really great at adapting. That's the really amazing thing about human bodies. It's really great at adapting. So you probably are, quote, fine. Like you're functioning, right? You're a functioning human. You're getting through the day. You're doing the things that need to get done. But it's this like underlying thing burning under the surface, right? And so for me, I have a lot of clients that say that. And I look at their labs and I'm like, no, your body is telling me a different story, right? You feel on a surface because that's your new threshold, right? That's the level that you've established as this is my baseline. But your body has all these things going on in the surface. And that's another reason why I love mineral testing. Like you said, I agree with you. I think that you can get a better look at the burnout situation and the labs are telling me what's actually happening in your body. And so I think it's just this understanding that our bodies are really good at adapting, but it also doesn't mean that eventually it's going to reach a level where your body now has to scream at you because it's been whispering and giving you little signs and signals and we just pushed them down. I was like, I don't have time for that. I'll deal with it later. Eventually it's going to be yelling at you and you have 24 different things you have to work on instead of just the few that are annoying.
I think one of the places it shows up overall is I think that it has a lot to do with relapse and causing where you can go correct. Actually, one of the reasons I ended up in that rabbit hole, or maybe with sluggish thyroid specifically, I feel like, okay, sluggish thyroid is related to adrenals and related to drainage, and yet stress is going to be a rate limiting factor around it. But if that's sluggish, then your gut is going to be sluggish. And so you're going to have relapsing gut issues. Yeah. So you're going to have relapsing drain issues. So for me, once I learned more about it, I was like, you can't not take care of everything.
Yeah.
And so what was happening was you'd see the results, which is exciting. We're now validating. You'd support and you would get results. But there were some more obstacles because if you continue to dump out the minerals, then you continue to have low status. So let's talk about what you saw as well. I'm sure you had some similar experiences because when you talked before this, you said, I started with the physical piece and then layered in the energetic piece. And so I don't know if you were seeing a similar thing, if you were doing retests and it was like, oh, I'm still low and it's still the same person. And so tell us about how that kind of looked in your practice and then what you did next overall.
Yeah. That's really, I totally agree with that. And I have this conversation with my clients where it's like, you can't expect to heal your body and be the same person you are than when you had the symptoms. Like you can't, it doesn't work like that. If you really want to change the symptoms, like we have to reprogram what's going on under the surface. And that's the reason that I started bringing in human design with my clients and then started doing all the subconscious reprogramming to help decondition things is for that reason. Like we have to change the operating system. There's an operating system that's running the show and it's perpetuating these symptoms or whatever it is that's showing up in the physical body. And so we have to get to the bottom of that. And so it's getting to the bottom of those patterns and those beliefs that are running the show energetically, causing these physical things to happen. And that's the big piece. The women that come to me, I would say 99% of them, they've worked with other practitioners. They've done the holistic thing. They've done the functional thing. Like they've done all these things. But this is the piece, the energetic piece is the piece that they haven't, that's been left out. And for me, that's the missing piece. That's the reason, like you said, that's why the symptoms keep coming back or they never really go away. It's missing this energetic piece. Like we can't expect the body to heal running on the same operating system that where the symptoms showed up. Like it doesn't make logical sense. We have to reprogram the operating system. We have to decondition. We have to shift the patterns, rewire, all of those things.
So I think, and I'll say this as a positive, it doesn't mean that you don't get dramatically awesome results from working on the physical body.
Sure.
It's just that to get the rest of the way or to not have relapse or to maybe you're not going to get 100, I never expect I'm going to get 100% results. I'm going to get maybe 50%, maybe 70, depending on what we're working on and how engaged someone is. And so what's cool is you use different modalities for the nervous system than I do. So I will share that what was bothering me was this unconscious stress piece because it was me too. It was like, oh, how do you even connect? I feel like I don't even resonate with some of those things. And so I started using a coaching methodology that took me to those unworthiness things or helped basically shine a light on, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, overwhelm is not real. Yeah. It's like there's something underneath of it. And it's often fear or worthiness issues in general. And so you can understand where if I have some kind of operating system, these thoughts, et cetera, going on from my brain, that's controlling how my body's dumping out those minerals, et cetera. So that was my one piece to connect head to heart or head to feelings in general. Because a lot of times when we're really have this calcium shell and we're really hard and we've been self-protecting or pushing our feelings under the rug or in the closet, we're really not that excited about bringing those out. Right. And so we needed to connect to those in a way that felt satisfied that logical brain in a way. Now, I think that human design probably has some elements of that as well. So I'll ask you to tie back to some of the tools that you use. So you use not only human design, but some other things. And I wouldn't even know where to start to ask about what do you see with human design and minerals? Yeah. Or if you were looking at a mineral test and you saw some sad adrenals and sluggish thyroid, et cetera, would you have automatic expectations on human design? Or does it depend? I'm just really curious how these things layer.
Yeah. No, I can pretty quickly look at someone's HTMA and see what's going on, like with their human design, vice versa. Like I can get the connections and then so basically what I look at the labs first, and then I look at the human design and can kind of make the connections. Okay, the lab is saying this is happening in your adrenals or this is happening in your thyroid. So then I'm going to tie it to the human design. So with the energy centers in human design, if those listening are familiar with the chakra system, their energy centers, they correlate with the chakras, right? So all of your chakras correlate with specific organs or glands that emit specific hormones. And so this is how I connect the physical and the energetic. So for example, if I'm looking at someone's sad adrenals on their mineral testing, then I'm going to know that, okay, I want to look and see what's happening in the root center. So I'm going to look at their human design. I'm going to see, okay, do you have a defined versus an undefined root center? Which if you're looking at your human design, is it colored in or is it not colored in? And then we're going to be able to have a conversation. So it's understanding, okay, how are they using the energy from the root center? The root center is a pressure center. It's a center for doing and initiating and starting things. And using as an example, if you have a defined root center, the pressure is internal. So you have this internal drive to get things done. But if you have it undefined, it's this external pressure. So you feel other people's energy and that's your driving factor. And a lot of times this can turn into comparison. This person's doing this and this person's going this fast and I'm behind. I have an undefined root center. And I know that this is a huge driving factor for my adrenal burnout was being in this comparisonitis for so many years in my business and trying this and this and this. None of it felt good. But I felt this in this rat race and I had to keep up and I had to keep going. And so that is like misaligned energy in our root center, using that as an example. If we're talking about the thyroid, your throat center is associated with your thyroid. So now we're going to talk about their throat center. You mentioned emotions a second ago. One of the centers I look at the most in your human design is because you can see it on like how your body's detoxing and everything when you're looking at the mineral testing, is your emotional solar plexus. Our emotional solar plexus is connected to a handful of detox organs. So when you are not allowing yourself to feel emotions, you're suppressing, repressing, pushing them down, all the things we were talking about, holding your body back from detoxing properly. Of course, you're going to be dealing with things like maybe you have estrogen dominance, right? Or maybe you just are detox, right? You have toxins recirculating in your body. So there's a direct correlation between our emotional processing and how our body is detoxing. And I can see that when I'm looking at human design.
Oh, I really appreciate this because I did a human design test probably 5 years ago, and I had someone trying to explain it to me who I was not resonating with. Sometimes you just have to find someone who can speak your language.
Totally,
And it's, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. I'm going to ask you to underline or highlight one more time the root chakra, because I pulled up my chart and you said if it's colored in or not colored in. And I think this is interesting. It's, do you have an inner drive or do you feel driven by others? And I wonder, I'm not sure which one it is, if it's the bottom one or the one right above it.
It's the bottom one. The very bottom is the root.
Okay, it's like gold colored, so I don't know if that's filled in or not.
Yeah.
Because the one above it's red.
Oh.
So the rest of it's white. I can show you as well, because I'm only intrigued by this just because I remember for the longest time, essentially like my inner frustration was putting everyone's needs before myself, before anything else. And so what you brought up, I just think is a really interesting thing potentially, because I could see how that could like constantly create dissonance, right? And stress in the body. So I'm not sure if it's colored in or not.
Yours, so let's see, what are your generators? So you only have 2 centers defined, and that would be your root and your sacral. That's what makes you a generator by default. Your sacral is that second box, the one that's red. I don't know why it's 2 colors, but both of those would be defined. So for you, you have that more internal pressure, which doesn't mean there's not conditioning there. There's conditioning there too, because you can also be really hard on yourself and push yourself to your limits and not know when to stop. That's the conditioning for a defined root center. And then the sacral center, the one right above. This is actually, so I would say the 3 I look at the most, the root center, which I just talked about, the sacral, which is right above yours, is red there. And then to the right of that is a little triangle. That's your solar plexus that I talked about a second ago. Your sacral center, the one that's red on yours, this is our center for life force energy and creativity and sexuality. And it's also, not by coincidence, is associated with our reproductive organs. And so we think about how many women deal with reproductive issues and fertility issues and hormonal issues. There's so much going on in that center. And that could also be a whole other episode. But those are probably the 3 that I look at the most.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think this is the bottom line is in the beauty of this long form podcast, we get to try to relate to people or make it tangible or whatnot. Because when I look at this chart, it is simply Greek to me, which I know that
there's a lot there.
I know that it's, and I will tell that to people who want to do a mineral test. It's not really something you self-interpret. In fact, the first time I learned mineral testing from a different mentor, I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, she makes this sound terrible that people like react to this and this. And it's like, there's multiple ways to go about the same thing overall. And so it's interesting. And I like to consider how there are potentially sometimes ancient ties to some of the things we talk about. People may have a positive or negative stereotype around chakras. I don't know the origin of chakras, but you're essentially, and how many? Well, there's 7. Like I do not speak chakra. So maybe you could give us a 30,000. Maybe you could just, as we did with human design. And the thing about human design that's intriguing is it's based on like literally where you were born as well.
Yeah. It can be up there on the woo scale for people. There's a lot of science to back it up because there's this whole science around neutrinos, which are these subatomic particles that can go through matter and affect our DNA. So there's a lot of science. I get that, and that fascinates me. I love that intersection of like science and energetics. There's a lot of science. I also think that there is a lot of science to the chakras too. So if you're familiar with traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about that a lot in traditional Chinese medicine. And the belief in Chinese medicine is that the yin and yang, or the balance in the body, starts with the endocrine system. And so all of the chakras are tied to the endocrine system. They're all tied to specific glands in the body. And so there are 7 main ones. So in human design, there's 9. You see there's 9 little shapes on your chart, but there's 7 main chakras in the chakra system. And they flow through a straight line. The 7 main ones flow up through the body, and they're all associated with specific organs and glands. And they are responsible for specific energies and emotions. And that's how it affects the chi, or the life force energy in the body.
So interesting. No, I love actually all Eastern Asian medicine. And a lot of times, and I love like face mapping and things. I've never found that to have fallacy. And their research was asking all these, we'll call them medicine people, essentially to combine all of their data. Here's what I saw, and it was related to. And so that was their research, right? Oh, we all saw those same patterns. And that's, I guess I love that because I'm a big fan of pattern recognition in general.
Yeah.
I'm also a huge fan, and I can tell you are too, of like how do we use some of our inner wiring or how we're conditioned or how we present to the world to help us live our best life? Like, how do we use those as strengths, right? And how do we fill in our weaknesses? And when we start to do that, now we're more of a whole person and we're not trying to fill in everything. We're not trying to do everything. We're not trying to pour out from this half full cup that's getting so empty. And we have these burned out adrenals, and before you know it, and then we're just continuing to blaze on because we got to prove ourselves, right? Worthy. Anyone who like earned any kind of professional degree in any kind of oppression of at all, right? Which could be any woman, any race, any color, all of these things, right? All of those things are incredible breeding grounds for some of the stuff we covered today, right? Our value and our productivity, et cetera. And so it's just very interesting. I'd love to understand a little bit on how these different cultures, thought processes, et cetera, that have lasted through essentially centuries, you know, how they came to be, what was some of the rationale behind them, and how can we use something. I'm not saying like have a personality test and it's a god, right? At all. It's just a tool to help me fill in some gaps and help me understand myself better, because I think how we get to where we want to go is to understand ourselves well enough, right? To actually be connected. I know this isn't very resonant if you're completely disconnected to yourself, as I once was, but it's how we get to a connection point overall. It's how we fill in these things where right now we might be filling it in with material, right? Or doing all the things like we think that productivity is going to give us some value, and we're already inherently valuable, right? And so it's like these kind of things that we have to discover. And I think this is part of all of our, I think an opportunity or a perspective we can have is this is the journey. I think sometimes people get frustrated, myself included. We just want to heal the problem and never deal with it again.
Yep. Just get rid of it.
Yeah. And it's, what is the lesson in this thing? And if I'm not going to learn the lesson in this thing, it's going to keep showing up in another way, unfortunately. And I think you had a comment or a question before we came in about how do we prevent ourselves from getting imbalanced again? And I think that this is a really good thing to end on. Yeah. Because I'm obsessed with the concept of relapse prevention. I don't think really anyone's talking about it, but this is your statement of how you bring it up. So talk to us a little bit about that. We've danced around the topic already, of course. But when you consider all of this, it's okay, let me help validate with this physical thing. And then let's actually get into the pulling back into alignment so you can actually heal, because we can keep dumping the minerals down and you will feel better, undoubtedly, right? But how can we start to bring back into alignment? I like the concept of bringing back into alignment, because if we think about it from the physical sense, a lot of symptoms are just deficiency or imbalance in a system in general. And you're just taking that to a different level as well with everything you've talked about today with chakra and human design, et cetera. The conversation is balance, literally. Are we getting sucked? Is everything being poured out of us more than we're pouring in? And so what would you say to someone who's, okay, I'm getting this, but I need to understand tangibly what to do now, and how do I stop from being out of balance, et cetera? Yeah. So how do you want to answer that?
I think the best way, or perhaps the only way, is, and this might sound really trite, but it's just to understand your body. Mm-hmm. And it sounds basic, I know, but I tell my clients this all the time when they work with me. If you get no results whatsoever from me, I at least want you to understand how your body works. I want you to understand physics, which I go deep. When I'm doing labs, I'm going deep into the explanation. I want you to understand everything that the lab is saying and how this correlates to what you're feeling. I want to go deep into your human design, understand, so you understand yourself energetically. Like, I want you to have, none of us were given a manual for how this vessel works, right? So we don't know. Half of us weren't even taught how our period works. Let's be honest. Yeah. So I want women to understand how their bodies work. And I really think that's the key to that, to your question. How do we prevent, like, how do we get into alignment and not get out? And not to say you're never going to get out of alignment, because we're human living a human experience and this is not a linear existence. But the fact is, when you have this understanding of your body and you have this deep knowing and this deep body wisdom, then you know how to handle anything that comes your way. So when you do feel things maybe pop back up, or this thing flared, or I'm in this stressful situation and I don't want to get myself all in it, about you are resourced, you have the tools, you're resourced because you have that deep inner knowing, that inner wisdom of your body and how it works and why it works and what I can do to help this thing and how do I can embody this piece, and am I letting go of this boundary? Like, you can make all those adjustments because you have that knowing. So as basic or silly or whatever, unsexy as it sounds, I really think it's just the knowing, like really knowing and understanding your body and how it works like that. I really feel like that's the answer to everything.
I agree with you. I would say, as I've restructured how I help clients, a lot of it is physiology. I'm like, let me help you understand physiology blended with what we know works in the most efficient way possible. That's the personal experience part of it or the clinical experience part of it. But otherwise, it's physiology in a way that you can take with you and understand, because the reality is if something got out of balance once, it could happen again. It's just, if you can be aware of it and understand it and realize your body's not attacking you, it's just telling you a story.
A message.
Yeah, it's just giving you a message. So I think this was so much fun. And actually, so I didn't know we'd be aligned. And that's always fun as well. It's, we had some similar experiences. Hope, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm at the Hope Pedraza. My website is hopefulandwholesome.com. And then I also have a podcast by the same name, Hopeful and Wholesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Christa. Thanks for having me.
Just keep breaking. I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.